Hello and welcome to Monster Monday. On today's episode, we're entering the spooky month of October and therefore we're going in with something scary. Today, we're doing the Banshee. All right, friends, it's October, so we're going to do a spooky monster today. Yay! So the Banshee, I think, is the first foray officially into the new evolution of this series, Monster Monday, for the undead category. So let's take a look at what the Monster Manual has to say about the Banshee. When night falls, unlucky travelers hear the faint cries of the forlorn dead. This woeful spirit is a Banshee, a spiteful creature formed from the spirit of a female elf. Banshees appear as luminous, wispy forms that vaguely recall their mortal features. A banshee's face is wreathed in a wild tangle of hair, its body clad in wispy rags that flutter and stream around it. And just an interesting little side note, if you are newer to D&D, there's an evolution in the quality of art and just overall design for each edition of D&D books. And that's not to disparage the artists from like first edition, but literally most of the art in first edition was black and white, and second edition started to introduce more color, third, fourth, and now fifth progressively, more color and kind of a little bit more finesse with the art. I really like the picture of the Banshee in the 5th edition book that we have here. I think it's very accurate to the imagination. It's also accurate to the description that the book provides for what a Banshee looks like. And just as a person who's been playing D&D for a really long time, over 40 years, I've found that the Banshee is not something that I ever knew was directly linked to a specific race. So I'm not sure if that's something that's new to 5th edition, or maybe it's just always been that way and I never noticed it. But I wasn't really aware that the Banshee was, a ghost version of a female elf. So kind of interesting. All right, let's talk about Banshees. The Divine Wrath. Okay, so Banshees are the undead remnants of elves who, blessed with great beauty, failed to use their gift to bring joy to the world. So the existence of a Banshee is based on being cursed. Instead, they use their beauty to corrupt and control others. Elves afflicted by the Banshee's curse experience no gladness, feeling only distress in the presence of the living. As the curse takes its toll, their minds and bodies decay until death completes their transformation into undead monsters. A Banshee becomes forever bound to the place of its demise, unable to venture more than 500 miles from there. No, sorry, more than 5 miles. Now, that's an interesting thing, because as a DM, you want to know what the range of a given monster is. And this specific little note is not just a limit about a Banshee, but it's a potential story thread for an encounter. In other words, as a DM, you can think about how to use a Banshee just by figuring out where this Banshee is tied to and why she is tied there. Maybe this was her ancestral home. Maybe she was part of a noble house of elves, and she was maybe one of the last of her line, and in her living times, manipulated and was involved in a lot of like political machinations, and maybe was evil in some fashion, or if not evil, then selfish in some way, and thus became cursed and became a Banshee. But maybe she haunts her ancestral home, this noble house. Whether that's just a mansion or a castle, you can decide as a DM, but this creates like a little plot hook now. So this character can be more than just like, you encounter a Banshee, rolled initiative. Now you're creating like a whole scene for it, and you can begin to open up your imagination and start thinking, well, what did she do in life that caused her to become cursed to be a Banshee? Does the party simply wish to raid the ancestral home and loot it and defeat the monsters that live there and maybe defeat this Banshee? Or is there something more to it? Maybe there's a path of redemption for this Banshee. So let's read on. The Banshee is forced to relive every moment of its life with perfect recall, yet always refuses to accept responsibility for its doom. The vanity that inspired the Banshee's cursed creation persists in undeath. These creatures covet beautiful objects, fine jewelry, paintings, statues, and other objects of art. At the same time, a Banshee abhors any mirrored surface, for it can't bear to see the horror of its own existence. A single glimpse of itself is enough to send a Banshee into a rage. Again, that's a little note there. So for a good DM, that's an opportunity, right? Let's go back to the analogy we created, okay? There's a myth about this elven family that, where the last of its line was somehow cursed, and yet their castle, though ruined, is rumored to still have, wondrous items and wealth beyond imagination, and yet there are terrible monsters that have grown to lurk around it and in it, and rumors of ghosts and hauntings, right? So a party might be enticed to go check this out. And in the course of checking it out, you can populate the ruined manor with all sorts of, gems, jewelry, that kind of stuff, right? And any adventuring party is always interested in some loot, but maybe you tie that into the storyline. Maybe these specific objects were part of her collection in life, and now party members trying to steal it, she begins watching and commanding other undead or creatures to attack them. And maybe they find a room, and in that room are all these special adornments and, an amazing mahogany 4-poster bed and, wondrous dressers and armoires and stuff. And there's a mirror, like a stand-up mirror, but it's got like a drape over it, right? So what happens, when they pull the drape back now? And maybe there's something revealing that connection to the Banshee in that encounter. All right, little side note here for the mechanics. They have an undead nature, so a Banshee doesn't require air, food, drink, or sleep. Pretty obvious, but something to know. Okay, let's get into the stat block, and then maybe that'll stimulate more of this encounter that we're creating for the Banshee. So to begin with, Banshees are CR 4, challenge rating 4. And you know what, to be honest, I don't know why D&D doesn't put the challenge rating at the top. In my opinion, if you're looking at a stat block really quick as a DM, it'd be nice to have like Banshee, challenge rating 4, right at the top. So if I'm flipping through and I need monsters on the fly, or I can search it, whatever. I mean, it's probably pretty searchable if you're using a digital format, but I think that, that's something that would be beneficial to have up top. So armor class 12, hit points about 58. They have a flying speed of 40 feet. They can hover. The Banshee's highest attribute, not surprisingly, is charisma. Damage resistance against acid, fire, lightning, thunder, bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical weapons. So a challenge rating 4 monster is fine for a mid-level encounter. The challenge really comes in when the party has to figure out how to deal with this Banshee. How do you deal with this Banshee? How do you fight it? Because that's a lot of damage resistance. Then, on top of all that, it has damage immunities to cold, necrotic, and poison. It also has condition immunities to being charmed, exhaustion, frightened, grappled, paralyzed, petrified, poisoned, prone, and restrained. So there's no way to tie this Banshee down. If she wants to leave, she can flee. It has 60 feet of dark vision. It speaks Common and Elvish. All right, now into some of its special abilities. Detect life. The Banshee can magically sense the presence of living creatures up to 5 miles away. She knows the general direction they're in, but not their exact locations. How do you as a DM use that? Well, think about it. The Banshee is tied to this place, and in our example, we'll say she's tied to her manor, and people generally avoid the area. Why? because it's not just when you go in the manor that you might be encountering other things. Maybe you populate the area around it. Over time, the area around it has become a bastion for other monsters. Maybe it's an all undead encounter. So you have zombies and skeletons that kind of lurk within a mile radius of the manor. But those are lightweight for a mid-level party, so that's not a big obstacle. But for like commoners, they would probably avoid it just for that. Maybe you have some other, tricks up your sleeve as well with the undead. But I think what makes it cool is that she would know when the party's on their way towards her manor, at least the general direction that they're coming from. And then, the fact that she can kind of go within that range would allow her to kind of spy on the party. So even before the party gets to the manor, you could have some pre-encounters where, they have to roll perception, or you do a passive perception check to see if they notice this wispy form past a grove of trees looking out at them. And then if they do they give chase to her, or do they avoid her? And then maybe she kind of scopes them out, and then she returns to the manor and begins preparing, defending her, her place where she's living. All right, then we have Incorporeal Movement. The Banshee can move through other objects and creatures as if they were difficult terrain. She takes 5 force damage if she ends her turn inside an object. Why that's cool is because, maybe there's a wall around the manor. Maybe there are walls in the manor that go to other rooms, and the party hasn't found a secret door to get to the room. So maybe inside the manor house, there are secret rooms, so to speak, that she has that she could go to if she needs to flee from the party. All right, then we have her actions. So the first one is Corrupting Touch. This is a melee spell attack. +4 to hit, a reach of 5 feet, and 1 target. It does 12 necrotic damage. That's a nice little attack to do every round. And it's actually 12 is the average. It's 3d6 plus 2, so it could do up to 20 damage. Horrifying Visage. This one's cool. This is kind of, a lot of creatures have special abilities that make them kind of unique, and then they share abilities with other kinds of creatures. So there's a lot of overlapping, or at least similar special attacks or special abilities that ghosts and banshees and that kind of stuff might have. This one I really like. So Horrifying Visage. Each non-undead creature within 60 feet of the Banshee that can see her must succeed on a DC 13 Wisdom save or be frightened for 1 minute. A frightened target can repeat the saving throw at the end of each of its turns with disadvantage if the Banshee is within line of sight, ending the effect on itself on a success. If a target's saving throw is successful or the effect ends for it, the target is immune to the Banshee's Horrifying Visage for the next 24 hours. So that might be an initial thing that she does if the party runs to confront her all at once. That's a really easy way for her to initially kind of split up and panic the party. All right, then we have Wail. Wail is a once per day power, and here's why. The Banshee releases a mournful wail, provided that she isn't in sunlight. This wail has no effect on constructs and undead. All other creatures within 30 feet of her that can hear her must make a DC 13 con save. On a failure, a creature drops to 0 hit points. On a success, a creature takes 3d6 psychic damage. So think about that. Think about dropping to 0 hit points. That's powerful. If the group goes at her all in, she can do the wail, and there's a really good chance, more than a really good chance, that she will drop half the party to 0. Now, in Monster Monday, I've mentioned this before, guys, as a DM tip, and I'm going to say it again here. Remember that as a DM, sometimes it's really good to surprise your party, especially if you're playing with veteran players who maybe DM themselves and have read the Monster Manual. Or sometimes you get groups of players who are just overly zealous, and even though they aren't DMs, they get their own copy of the Monster Manual, and they memorize it anyway. And that is really metagaming. And I feel like it takes away from the gaming experience. So how do I change that? Couple easy ways. Number one, you don't refer to this creature as the Banshee. You call her the Lady of Silvaris. I just made that up. But you give her the title. you refer to her as a spectral form. So the party, the players, not the characters, the actual players, aren't necessarily sure if this is a banshee or a ghost or some other creation that you have. Number 2, feel free to change these numbers. The point is not to be adversarial. You're not supposed to, as a DM, make your setup be DM against players. It's not about being adversarial. You're not trying to just kill the party. That's bad DMing. You're trying to challenge the party. There's a difference. So maybe if you have a party that's really strong at mid-level, maybe they're a really well-balanced party, maybe they've been able to take out all your encounters with great ease, maybe they just work really well together strategically. Whatever the case may be, then you dial this up. Maybe you give her the ability to do the whale twice a day. Or maybe you make the DC for the save against the whale 17 instead of 13. So there are a lot of ways to make this more challenging. On the flip side, let's say you have a big party and they're 3rd level. Let's say you got 6 players, but they're only 3rd level. This Banshee could be, I mean, with the right rolls, this Banshee could wipe that party out. So maybe you tone that down and you don't use the whale unless it's absolutely necessary. So as a DM, always remember that if you need to flex to make it more challenging or flex to make it more fair, you can do that. You could change some of these things. And those are just a couple ways that I would think of doing it right off the top of my head. Keep your party on their toes. Remember that not every monster is going to fight to the death. Why would they? Why wouldn't she just flee? She has the ability to move through walls. It's easy for her to, without invoking an attack of opportunity, to just back away through a wall. You know, disengage through a wall. Like, why couldn't she do that? And who knows her manor house better than she does? She's been stuck there, cursed in this form, for decades, or maybe whatever, how long you decide. So here's an example where you could take one monster, this Banshee, and create an entire counter, not just an encounter, an adventure. You could turn that into a module. Manor House of the Lady Sylvaris, whatever. Where, you know, now the party is going there for some reason. And by the way, if the lure of loot is not enough to give an incentive to your party to go there, create another incentive. Here's an example. Maybe the young princess from the local town has gone missing. And the Lord sent out, or the king, whatever, sent out trackers to go find her, and the trackers found her tracks leading her towards the ruined manor of House Sylvaris. There you go. So now the king or the Lord, whatever, they need the party to be heroes and go rescue this girl. The hunters and trackers from town will not go near because there are rumors of hauntings and blah, blah, blah. And zombies have been seen, right? So then you create multiple encounters on the way there. You throw some zombies and skeletons at them, and maybe they wipe those out easily, you know? Then you populate the area around it with a couple other kind of monsters that randomly haunt that area. And then inside the manor itself is a complete dungeon crawl. I mean, you could literally have a dungeon underneath the manor house, but then the house itself is full of all sorts of things. So they've got the incentive of rescuing the princess or prince, whatever. They've got the incentive of, you know, the rumors of wealth that existed here, and they have to overcome this. Now, to circle back before I close this episode, I want to share that idea that I had. Because not every encounter has to end with combat. Maybe this party can figure out a way to defeat the Banshee without killing it. Maybe that's the key. Maybe the party uses social skills and role-playing to figure out a solution. How can they release this Banshee from her curse? And maybe that lies in some kind of thing, some deed that they could do to help her redeem herself, to lift the curse. Now, as a DM, how do you come up with that? Well, she was cursed for her vanity and for her lust for power and her lust for gold and wealth and jewels and gems and all that stuff, right? Maybe there's a secret, and that is there's an existing line of people who generations ago were taxed and robbed by this woman and her noble house. And maybe by taking these treasures back to the town and distributing it to the families, and you make up 3 or 4 different family names. By distributing that wealth, redistributing it to those families, the curse will be lifted. She can't do that herself because she's incorporeal, number 1, and number 2, the town is further than 5 miles away, so she can't do it herself. But if they engage her socially, you can make that option happen. Now, how do you even plant the seed for that? Well, while the party's exploring, maybe they defeat some monsters in a couple different rooms and they uncover this diary or a ledger that shows the history of her family and how they taxed these 3 different other families out of, their livelihoods. And that could be a clue. So in other words, there's some record, some written record, whether it's a diary or a ledger of her family's wealth, that demonstrates that she was responsible for the ruination of these 3 families. And these 3 families, went from relatively affluent positions as merchant families to now they're poverty stricken. And you have the names be names that you name dropped way earlier in the campaign. So like in the kingdom or the town, whatever's close, the city, maybe the party encountered members generations later of these 3 families, Oh, that's the Cooper family, and they're, friendly. And then there's the Smitties, and the Smitties, they used to be very wealthy, but now they're just, kind of barely scraping by making horseshoes, So you kind of plant these different NPCs as other characters in the town and shopkeepers and stuff, but you drop names so that your party knows, hey, wait a minute, we know Smitties, we know the Coopers, we know the Millers. Oh, wow, that's, and come up with more original names. But, so then all of a sudden as they're looking through the diary and they read this history, they realize like, oh, wow, she's the reason why those families are poor now. And then they make this connection. Maybe they can help her, or if they don't, if they confront her socially and they get her to talk instead of just attacking, maybe there's a way for them to talk with her and she could explain to them that she's been cursed because of what she did. And that, there's only one way to redeem herself, and that's by taking all the wealth and giving it back to these families that she stole it from. So, I don't know, just some thoughts there. But, if you want a little more of a rich adventure, you can take this character, this idea, you could take what I just laid out from you from this episode of Monster Monday and try it out. And let me know in the comments if you've tried it out, or if you plan to try it out, or if you've done something similar, share that as well. But that'll wrap it up for this episode of Monster Monday featuring the Banshee. Thank you guys as always. Please remember to like, subscribe, click on that little notifications bell, and we'll see you on the next episode.